Jake Morrison rubbed his tired eyes as he sat in front of the communications console aboard the UES Horizon. The stars outside the viewport looked the same as they had for the past 3 months during their mapping mission in the Outer Rim territories. Nothing but empty space, dead rocks, and the occasional gas giant that held no interest for anyone back on Earth. The Horizon was humanity's newest deep space exploration vessel, built for long-range missions that could keep crews away from home for years at a time. Captain Ryan Blake commanded a crew of 42 specialists, each chosen for their ability to work in isolation and handle whatever the unknown depths of space might throw at them. Jake stretched in his chair and checked the time display. His shift would end in 2 hours, and he was looking forward to getting some sleep. The ship's routine had become predictable after months in the void. Navigation readings, sensor sweeps, communication checks with Earth Command, and endless reports about stellar phenomena that nobody really cared about. That was when the signal came through. At first, Jake thought it was just static interference from a nearby pulsar. The speakers crackled with broken fragments of sound that made no sense. But something about the pattern caught his attention. It was too regular to be natural interference, too structured to be random cosmic noise. He leaned forward and adjusted the receivers, trying to clean up the transmission. The signal was incredibly weak, coming from somewhere far beyond their current position. Jake had been working communications for 8 years, and he knew the difference between equipment malfunction and an actual transmission. "Lisa, can you come over here for a minute?" Jake called to communications officer Lisa Park, who was working at a nearby station. Lisa was one of the best signal specialists in the fleet, with an almost supernatural ability to pull meaning from the most garbled transmissions. Lisa walked over and put on a headset, listening intently as Jake played back the recorded signal. Her face grew serious as she worked with the filtering equipment, slowly isolating different frequency bands and running them through the ship's computer systems. "This is definitely artificial," Lisa said after several minutes of analysis. "It's coming from grid reference 847 Delta, about 4 light-years from our current position. The transmission is heavily degraded, probably traveling through multiple interference fields." Jake watched as Lisa worked her technical magic, gradually cleaning up the signal until something resembling words began to emerge from the static. The ship's universal translator kicked in, struggling to process a language it had never encountered before. The first clear phrase that came through made both officers freeze in their seats. "Help us. Please, anyone who can hear this transmission. We need immediate assistance. Our world is under attack." Lisa and Jake exchanged glances before Lisa quickly patched the signal through to the bridge. Within minutes, Captain Blake arrived in the communications bay, followed by Navigator Amy Collins and Chief Engineer Danny Wright. Medical Officer Helen Barnes joined them shortly after. Drawn by the unusual activity, "Play it again from the beginning," Captain Blake ordered, his face grim as he listened to the desperate message. The cleaned-up transmission was still broken in places, but the meaning was clear. The speakers identified themselves as representatives of something called the Kirani Collective, describing their world as a peaceful agricultural colony that had never experienced warfare. They spoke of attackers they called the Devouring Swarm, creatures that consumed everything in their path and left nothing but bare rock behind. "According to our star charts, there shouldn't be any inhabited systems in that region," Amy Collins reported, checking her navigation displays. The Galactic Survey marked that entire sector as uninhabitable. Danny Wright shook his head as he listened to more of the transmission. "These people sound terrified. They're talking about biomechanical ships that eat their cities and turn their people into some kind of food source." The transmission continued with increasingly desperate pleas for assistance. The Kirani explained that they had no military, no weapons capable of fighting off their attackers. Their entire civilization was built around agriculture and peaceful trade, with no concept of warfare or violence. Captain Blake stood silently for several minutes, weighing their options. The Horizon was an exploration vessel, not a warship. They had defensive weapons and shields, but nothing designed for actual combat. Their mission was to map unexplored regions of space, not to intervene in alien conflicts. "How long would it take us to reach their position?" Blake asked Amy. "At maximum warp speed, about 18 hours, she replied. "But Captain, we have no idea what we'd be flying into. These devouring swarm creatures could be anything." Helen Barnes stepped forward, her medical training making her focus on the humanitarian aspects of the situation. "Captain, these people are asking for help. If their description is accurate, they're facing complete extinction." Jake continued monitoring the signal as the senior officers debated. The Karani transmission was growing weaker, and he could hear explosions and screaming in the background. Whatever was happening to these people, it was getting worse by the minute. "Captain," Lisa said suddenly, "I'm picking up other transmissions from the same region, multiple sources, all broadcasting distress signals. This isn't just one settlement under attack. It sounds like their entire world is being consumed." Blake made his decision with the decisive authority that had earned him command of an exploration vessel. "Amy, set course for the Karani system, maximum warp. Danny, I want a full diagnostic on all our defensive systems." Lisa, try to establish two-way communication with the Karani and let them know help is coming. The crew sprang into action with practiced efficiency. The Horizon had been designed for exactly this kind of rapid response, even though none of them had expected to use those capabilities for a rescue mission involving aliens they had never heard of. As the ship changed course and accelerated toward the unknown, Jake continued trying to maintain contact with the Karani. The signals were becoming more fragmented as whatever was attacking them apparently targeted their communication infrastructure. "This is Lieutenant Commander Morrison aboard the human vessel Horizon. Jake, broadcast on all frequencies. We have received your distress signal and are proceeding to your location. Please respond if you can hear this transmission." For several minutes there was only static. Then, incredibly, a clear voice came through the speakers, speaking accented but understandable English thanks to the universal translator. "Human vessel, this is Karani Controller Vex speaking from our primary agricultural center. We do not understand who or what humans are, but if you can truly help us, please hurry. The Devourers have consumed half our world, and our people are dying by the thousands." Captain Blake took the microphone from Jake. "Controller Vex, this is Captain Blake of the exploration ship Horizon. We are 18 hours away from your position. Can you tell us anything about these attackers that might help us prepare?" The response came back filled with terror and confusion. "Captain Blake, the Devourers are like nothing we have ever seen. They arrive in ships that appear to be alive, massive creatures that feed on organic matter. They strip our cities bare and take our people to use as food for their young. We have no weapons, no way to fight them. All we can do is run and hide." Blake's jaw tightened as he listened to the description. Whatever they were flying into, it sounded like something out of humanity's worst nightmares. But the Horizon was already committed to the course, and there was no turning back now. The next 18 hours would determine whether humanity's first contact with alien civilization would be as saviors or as witnesses to genocide. The Horizon dropped out of warp speed at the edge of the Karani system, and Captain Ryan Blake felt his blood turn cold at what appeared on the main view screen. Half of the planet below them was covered in a dark, moving mass that seemed to pulse and writhe like a living thing. Where green continents should have been, there was only bare brown earth stripped of all vegetation and structures. "My God," whispered Navigator Amy Collins as she stared at the sensor readings. "Captain, I'm detecting massive biomechanical constructs in orbit around the planet. They're the size of city blocks, and they appear to be alive." Chief Engineer Danny Wright worked frantically at his console, running every scan the ship's sensors could manage. "These things don't match any known ship design in our databases. The energy signatures suggest they're actually living organisms, but they're using some kind of technology we don't understand. Through the communications system, they could hear the panicked voices of Karani survivors broadcasting from the remaining settlements on the unconsumed half of their world. The alien voices spoke of terror and desperation as more of their people were taken every hour. "Captain, I'm picking up what appears to be the local defense fleet," reported Weapons Officer Carl Peters from his station. 6 vessels, all converted cargo ships with mining lasers. They're trying to engage the bioships, but their weapons aren't even scratching the surface." Blake watched through the view screen as one of the Karani ships fired its mining laser at a massive bioconstruct. The beam struck the creature's hide and simply absorbed into its surface without causing any visible damage. In response, the bioship extended what looked like a massive tentacle that wrapped around the Karani vessel and began pulling it toward a gaping maw that opened along its side. "Red alert. All hands to battle stations," Blake ordered over the ship's intercom. "We're going in." The Horizon was not a warship, but it carried defensive weapons and shields designed to protect it from pirates and hostile encounters during deep space exploration. Against the massive bioconstructs surrounding the Karani homeworld, those defenses seemed pitifully inadequate. "Danny, give me everything our engines can handle," Blake commanded as they dove toward the planet. "Carl, target the bioship that's attacking the Karani vessel. Let's see what our plasma cannons can do against these things." The Horizon's weapons opened fire, sending bright streams of superheated plasma into the bioship's hull. Unlike the mining lasers, the plasma bursts actually seemed to hurt the creature. It released the Karani ship and turned toward this new threat, revealing a front section covered in what looked like eyes and sensory organs. "It's working," Carl shouted with excitement. "The plasma is causing cellular damage. These things might be tough, but they can bleed." More bioships began converging on the Horizon's position, moving with surprising speed for creatures of their size. Blake found himself facing a tactical nightmare as dozens of the massive organisms surrounded his single vessel. "Amy, use the planet's ring system for cover," Blake ordered. "We need to break up their formation and keep them from surrounding us." The navigator skillfully guided the Horizon between the rocky debris that orbited the Karani world, using the larger asteroids as shields while Carl continued firing at any bioship that came within range. The tactic worked better than any of them had hoped, as the hive-minded creatures seemed confused by the guerrilla warfare approach. Medical Officer Helen Barnes worked at her station, monitoring the crew's vital signs and preparing for casualties that seemed inevitable. "Captain, I'm detecting human-compatible atmosphere on the planet's surface. If we need to evacuate Karani civilians, our life support systems can handle them. Lisa, can you coordinate with the surviving Karani ships?" Blake asked Communications Officer Lisa Park. "We need to organize an evacuation of their remaining population centers while we keep these bioships busy." Lisa opened channels to every Karani vessel she could reach, speaking quickly in their translated language. "This is the human ship Horizon. We're going to cover your evacuation efforts. Get your people to the transport ships and head for the outer system. We'll hold the Devourers here as long as we can." The response from the Karani was a mixture of gratitude and disbelief. They could not understand why an unknown species would risk everything to help them, but they were desperate enough to accept any assistance offered. Over the next several hours, the Horizon fought a running battle through the Karani system, using hit-and-run tactics that kept the bioships off balance while civilian transports fled to safety. Blake pushed his ship and crew to their absolute limits, knowing that every minute they bought meant more innocent lives saved. "Captain, we've got a problem," Danny reported from the engineering section. "Our plasma cannons are overheating and I'm showing stress fractures in the primary hull. We can't keep this up much longer." As if responding to his words, one of the larger bioships managed to catch the Horizon with what appeared to be some kind of energy net. The ship's shields flared and sparked as the creature tried to drag them toward its feeding maw. Carl fired everything they had at the bioship holding them, while Danny diverted power from life support to boost their shield strength. The battle had become a desperate struggle for survival, with the crew working with the mechanical precision that came from years of emergency drills. "Hull breach on Deck 4, Helen reported as the ship shuddered under another attack. "Emergency bulkheads are holding, but we're losing atmosphere." Through it all, Lisa maintained contact with the fleeing Karani ships, guiding them away from the battle zone while providing updates on the evacuation progress. "Captain, the last transport is clear of the planet's gravity well. Most of the Karani population has been evacuated to their outer colonies." Blake made a decision that would haunt him for years to come. With his ship failing and his crew in mortal danger, he ordered Jake Morrison to send out humanity's first interstellar distress signal. But this was not a call for rescue. "Jake, send this message on all human frequencies," Blake said, his voice steady despite their desperate situation. "This is Captain Ryan Blake of the exploration vessel Horizon. We have made contact with a hostile alien species that commits genocide against peaceful civilizations. The threat is real and growing. This is not a request for assistance. This is a warning to all human forces. The galaxy needs protection from the devouring swarm, and we may be the only species willing to provide it." As Jake transmitted the message, the Horizon continued its impossible fight. One small ship holding the line against an enemy that had never before faced organized resistance. The crew knew they were probably going to die, but they also knew that their sacrifice would not be forgotten. The signal raced through space faster than light, carrying with it the news that would change everything humans thought they knew about their place in the galaxy. Admiral Kate Sullivan was reviewing fleet deployment reports in her office aboard the HDF Titan when the priority alert came through. The quantum communication system rarely activated outside of scheduled check-ins, and never with the urgent red coding that now flashed across her personal display screen. She opened the message and felt the color drain from her face as Captain Blake's voice filled the room. The report was impossible to believe, yet the authentication codes were genuine, and the transmission originated from the exact coordinates where the exploration vessel Horizon had been conducting its mapping mission. "Commander Ross, get me an immediate connection to Earth Command," Sullivan ordered her aide, who stood at attention in the doorway. "Priority Alpha classification. I need to speak with Admiral Chen within the next 10 minutes. As her aide rushed to establish the connection, Sullivan played Blake's message 3 more times, analyzing every word for additional information. The Horizon had made first contact with an alien species under attack, from what appeared to be a genocidal enemy that consumed entire worlds, but what shocked Sullivan more than the existence of hostile aliens was Blake's final statement. He had committed humanity to defending unknown aliens without authorization from Earth Command, without consulting the Colonial Council, without even knowing if the human fleet could handle such a threat. "Admiral Chen on Secure Channel 1, Commander Ross reported from his communication station. "Chen, have you received the transmission from the Horizon?" Sullivan asked without preamble. "Just finished reviewing it," came the reply from Admiral Chen at Earth Command. "Kate, this changes everything we thought we knew about our place in the galaxy. Blake has committed us to a war we know nothing about." Sullivan pulled up tactical displays showing the current positions of all human military vessels. The fleet was scattered across dozens of systems conducting routine patrols, training exercises, and support missions. Gathering them for a major operation would normally take weeks of planning and coordination. "How long do you think the Horizon can hold out?" Chen asked. "Based on Blake's report, probably not long," Sullivan replied grimly. "They're one exploration vessel against an unknown number of bioships. If we're going to respond, we need to move now. What happened next would become legendary in human military history." Within 30 minutes of receiving Blake's message, Admiral Chen issued a fleet-wide mobilization order that had never been attempted before. Every human military vessel, regardless of current mission status, received the same command: proceed immediately to Karani space. Captain Steve Martinez was conducting gunnery practice with his heavy cruiser Independence when the message arrived. Without hesitation, he abandoned the training exercise and ordered maximum warp toward the coordinates Blake had provided. His crew worked frantically to prepare for combat against an unknown enemy they had never trained to fight. "Commander Grace," Thompson received the order while her medical ship Sanctuary was delivering supplies to a research station. She immediately converted her vessel into a mobile hospital and rerouted to join the growing fleet. Her medical staff began preparing for casualties on a scale they had never imagined. Across human space, the response was immediate and overwhelming. Captain Tony Rodriguez abandoned a profitable cargo run to volunteer his converted hauler as a supply ship. Dr. Nina Clark turned her research vessel into a mobile laboratory, hoping to analyze the bioships and find their weaknesses. Even civilian vessels joined the effort without being asked. Mining ships, exploration vessels, and private yachts all changed course to join what was rapidly becoming the largest human military operation in history. The response surprised even Admiral Sullivan, who had expected resistance from ship captains unwilling to abandon their missions for unknown aliens. "Admiral, we have over 200 vessels confirming participation," Commander Ross reported as status updates flooded in from across the fleet. Estimated arrival time at Karani space ranges from 60 to 72 hours, depending on individual ship capabilities. Sullivan studied the tactical displays with growing amazement. The human fleet was converging on a single point in space, faster than any military theorist had believed possible. Ships were pushing their engines beyond safety limits, abandoning supply schedules, and ignoring protocol requirements in their rush to reach the battle zone. "Admiral Chen, are you seeing these response numbers?" Sullivan asked over the secure channel. "Kate, I'm looking at reports from ship captains I've never heard of," Chen replied with wonder in his voice. "Apparently every human in space has decided that genocide is something we won't tolerate, regardless of who the victims are." The most surprising responses came from vessels that were technically not military ships at all. Captain Phil Morgan led a squadron of civilian fighters that had been modified for asteroid mining. Commander Beth Carter volunteered her stealth reconnaissance ship for infiltration missions against the bio fleet. As the hours passed and more ships joined the growing armada, Sullivan began to understand what was happening. Humanity was not just responding to a military threat or a diplomatic crisis. They were responding to a moral imperative that transcended politics, economics, or even rational self-interest. The Karani were strangers, aliens that humans had never heard of before Blake's transmission, but they had sent out a cry for help, and that was enough. The idea that an entire species could be consumed and destroyed while others stood by and did nothing was simply unacceptable to human thinking. "Admiral, we're receiving updates from long-range sensors," Commander Ross reported. "The horizon is still broadcasting, but their signal is weak and intermittent. It appears they're still fighting but taking heavy damage." Sullivan felt a mixture of pride and concern as she listened to the latest reports from Blake's ship. The horizon had been fighting impossible odds for nearly 2 days, buying time for the Karani evacuation and for the human fleet to assemble. Their sacrifice was giving humanity its first real chance to make a difference in galactic affairs. "All ships, this is Admiral Sullivan," she broadcast on the fleet-wide channel. "Our mission parameters are simple. We're going to save the Karani homeworld, destroy this devouring swarm, and show the galaxy that humans don't abandon innocents to die. Every captain has tactical freedom to engage as they see fit. But remember that we're not just fighting for the Karani. We're establishing humanity's reputation among the stars." The responses that came back from across the fleet were immediate and unanimous. Ship captains from every branch of human space service acknowledged their orders and confirmed their commitment to the mission. In less than 72 hours, humanity would either prove itself as a force for good in the galaxy or face extinction alongside the peaceful aliens they had sworn to protect. As the human fleet raced through hyperspace toward their first interstellar war, none of them realized they were about to change the fundamental balance of power among the stars. The galaxy had existed for millennia, with species that would debate and negotiate while innocents died. Now it was about to meet a species that would fight without question to protect strangers they had never met. The age of human isolation was ending, and the age of human guardianship was about to begin. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Karani system in a display of coordinated military might that had never been seen before in galactic history. Over 300 vessels of every class and configuration formed up in attack formation, from massive battle cruisers to converted civilian ships bristling with hastily installed weapons. Admiral Sullivan stood on the bridge of the HDF Titan and felt her heart sink as she surveyed the devastation below. The Karani homeworld was now 90% consumed, its surface stripped bare except for a few isolated pockets where the bioships had not yet reached. The horizon was still there, somehow still fighting after 3 days of continuous battle, but her hull was scarred and blackened from repeated attacks. "Admiral, we're receiving a weak transmission from Captain Blake," reported Communications Officer Lieutenant Sam Porter. "The horizon has taken critical damage to their main systems, but they're still operational." Sullivan opened a channel to the battered exploration ship. "Captain Blake, this is Admiral Sullivan with the human fleet. Hold your position, we're coming to get you out of there." Blake's voice came back filled with exhaustion but still determined. "Admiral, the swarm has over 50 bioships in this system, each one the size of a city block. They've been coordinating their attacks through some kind of hive mind connection. We've managed to destroy 6 of them, but they adapt quickly to our tactics." "Understood, Captain. You've done more than enough." "All ships, this is Admiral Sullivan. Begin attack pattern Delta. Target the largest bioships first and work your way down. Remember, these things are alive, so aim for what looks like vital organs." The human fleet spread out across the system in a formation that would have impressed military strategists throughout the galaxy. Unlike other species that favored massive fleet engagements, the humans used small strike groups that could maneuver independently while supporting each other. Captain Martinez led the Independence and 5 other heavy cruisers in a direct assault on the largest bioships orbiting the planet. Their plasma cannons and missile systems opened fire in coordinated volleys that lit up space with brilliant explosions. The bioships, which had never faced such organized resistance, reeled under the concentrated firepower. These things bleed just like Captain Blake reported. Martinez called out over the tactical channel. Keep hitting the same spots. We can punch through their armor if we focus our fire. Commander Thompson positioned the sanctuary and her medical support ships at a safe distance from the battle, ready to treat wounded from both sides of the conflict. Her teams worked frantically to set up treatment facilities for injuries they had never seen before, while also preparing to help any surviving Karani they might find on the planet's surface. The civilian volunteers proved themselves just as capable as the regular military forces. Captain Rodriguez used his cargo hauler to deploy supply drones that kept the fighting ships stocked with ammunition and repair materials. Dr. Clark analyzed bioship debris and broadcast tactical information about weak points and vulnerable systems. But it was the fighter squadrons that truly showed the galaxy what human warfare looked like. Captain Morgan led dozens of small, fast ships in precision strikes against the bioship's sensory organs. The fighters moved like a swarm of angry insects, too small and too fast for the massive creatures to track effectively. "This is Morgan to all fighter wings," he broadcast, as his squadron dove through a forest of tentacles reaching for them. "These things are blind without their sensor clusters. Take out the eyes and they can't coordinate with the hive mind." Commander Carter used her stealth ship to plant nuclear charges inside the largest bioships, exploiting gaps in their organic armor that sensors could detect, but conventional weapons could not reach. Her missions were suicide runs that required flying directly into the creature's feeding chambers, but she volunteered for each one without hesitation. The battle raged for hours, with human ships using tactics that the swarm had never encountered before. Instead of fighting a traditional fleet engagement, the humans hunted their enemies like pack predators, isolating individual bioships and destroying them one by one. "Admiral, the bioships are trying to retreat," reported Captain Peters from his position near the planet's northern pole. "Several of the larger ones are breaking off and heading for the system's edge." Sullivan watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction as the swarm began to fall back. For the first time in their existence, these creatures were facing an enemy that refused to be consumed, that fought back with intelligence and determination they could not understand. "All ships pursue and destroy," Sullivan ordered. "We don't let any of these things escape to attack other worlds. This ends here today." The human fleet spread out across the system in a coordinated hunt that would become legendary among military historians. Ships that had never worked together before moved with perfect synchronization, sharing target data and coordinating attacks in real time. The bioships tried to fight back using tactics that had worked against every other species they had encountered. They released spore clouds designed to disable enemy systems, extended feeding tentacles to capture and consume attacking vessels, and attempted to overwhelm human forces through sheer numbers and size. But humans were different. They had evolved on a world where everything tried to kill them, where survival required constant adaptation and the ability to fight against impossible odds. The swarm was facing a species that understood predators because they had been prey for millions of years before becoming the ultimate predators themselves. "Admiral, we're picking up something interesting," Dr. Clark reported from her research vessel. "The bioships seem to be losing their coordination as we destroy more of them. I think the hive mind has a limited range and we're breaking up their network." Sullivan smiled grimly as she watched more bioships falling to human weapons. The creatures that had consumed dozens of worlds were learning what it meant to face a species that would not give up, would not negotiate, and would not stop fighting until every innocent life was protected. "All medical ships, prepare for planetary relief operations," Sullivan ordered. "As soon as we clear the bioships from orbit, I want search and rescue teams on the surface looking for Karani survivors. No one gets left behind." The final phase of the battle began as human ships moved into close orbit around the devastated Karani homeworld. The few remaining bioships were trapped between the planet's surface and the advancing human fleet, with nowhere left to run. For the first time in galactic history, the devouring swarm was about to face complete and total defeat at the hands of a species they had never imagined could exist. The last bioship died in a brilliant explosion that lit up the Karani system like a second sun. Admiral Sullivan watched from the bridge of the Titan as debris from the massive creature scattered across space, finally ending the 3-day battle that would change the galaxy forever. "All ships report enemy vessels destroyed," announced Communications Officer Porter. "No bioship signatures remain in the system." The swarm has been completely eliminated. Sullivan allowed herself a moment of satisfaction before turning her attention to the devastated planet below. The Karani homeworld was scarred and stripped, but life support readings showed that pockets of survivors still existed in the deepest underground shelters and most remote locations. "Begin planetary relief operations immediately," she ordered. "I want every medical ship and rescue team on the surface within the hour." Commander Thompson established field hospitals at the major survivor sites. "We're going to save every Karani we can find." The human fleet transformed from a military force into a massive rescue operation with the same efficiency they had shown in battle. Medical ships landed on the planet's surface while engineering vessels began repairing damaged infrastructure and establishing communication networks. Captain Blake brought the battered Horizon alongside the Titan for emergency repairs. His ship had fought alone for 3 days against impossible odds, and the scars of that battle were visible across every inch of her hull. When Blake finally stepped onto Sullivan's bridge, his crew behind him, the entire command staff stood at attention. "Captain, on behalf of humanity and the Karani people, I want to thank you for the stand you made here," Sullivan said formally. "Your actions gave us time to assemble the fleet and prevented a complete genocide." Blake looked exhausted but proud as he surveyed the tactical displays, showing human ships spread across the system. "Admiral, we did what any human crew would have done. When innocent people cry for help, we answer." On the planet's surface, the first meetings between human rescue teams and Karani survivors created scenes that would be remembered for generations. The plant-like aliens emerged from their shelters to find creatures they had never imagined. Bipedal beings from a distant world who had traveled across the galaxy to save them. The first Karani to meet Captain Rodriguez fell to the ground in gratitude, speaking in their musical language through universal translators. "You are the guardians who came from the dark," the alien said, tears flowing down his leaf-like face. "We had given up hope, believed our people would be consumed completely. Why did you come to save strangers you had never met?" Rodriguez helped the alien to his feet, his voice gentle despite the devastation around them. "Because it was the right thing to do. No one should have to face extinction alone." Similar scenes played out across the planet as human medical teams treated wounded. Karani and human engineers worked alongside alien technicians to restore basic services. The cooperation between the two species was immediate and natural, built on shared gratitude and mutual respect. Dr. Clark made an important discovery while analyzing the bioship remains. The creatures were not native to this region of space, but had traveled from somewhere far beyond the galactic rim. Her research suggested they were a scouting force for something much larger. "Admiral, we need to prepare for the possibility that more swarm forces exist," Clark reported during the fleet briefing. These bioships were carrying genetic samples from dozens of different worlds, suggesting they've been consuming civilizations across multiple star systems. The implications were sobering. The human fleet had won a great victory, but they had also announced their presence to whatever larger force controlled the devouring swarm. Humanity had made enemies they didn't fully understand while taking on responsibilities they weren't prepared for. Word of the human victory spread through galactic communication networks faster than anyone expected. The major powers of the galaxy, the Vorthak Empire, the Crystalline Confederacy, and the Hive Worlds, all received detailed reports of what humans had accomplished. A species they had dismissed as primitive Deathworlders had just achieved the impossible. Ambassador Zex of the Vorthak Empire sent a formal communication to Admiral Sullivan within days of the battle's end. "Admiral Sullivan, the Vorthak Empire wishes to establish immediate diplomatic relations with humanity. Your species has demonstrated capabilities that we did not know existed among Deathworld civilizations." Similar messages arrived from every major galactic power, each wanting to understand how humans had defeated a threat that had consumed over 40 worlds without ever facing serious resistance. The galaxy was waking up to the reality that Earth's children were not the barbaric primitives they had been assumed to, but the most meaningful responses came from smaller civilizations that had been hiding from the swarm for generations. Dr. Karen Lewis, a xenobiologist aboard the research vessel Discovery, made first contact with 12 different species that emerged from hidden colonies once news of the swarm's defeat spread. "The impossible guardians have come," transmitted Elder Vash of the Whisper Folk, a telepathic species that had been in hiding for over a century. We had lost hope that anyone would stand against the Devourers. Your people have given us back our future. Sullivan established a permanent human base in Kirani space, knowing that the swarm would eventually return in greater numbers. But now humanity was not alone. The Kirani pledged their agricultural worlds to supply human fleets, offering everything they had in gratitude for their salvation. Jake Morrison received a promotion and a new assignment as humanity's first official alien liaison, working with Kirani leaders to establish the protocols for their alliance. The communications officer who had first heard their distress signal now found himself helping to build the foundation for humanity's place among the stars. Jake, do you ever wonder what would have happened if we had ignored that transmission? Captain Blake asked during one of their planning sessions. Morrison looked out at the Kirani reconstruction efforts, where human and alien workers labored side by side to rebuild a world. Captain, I don't think we could have ignored it. It's not in our nature to let innocents suffer when we have the power to help. The human fleet began regular patrols of the galaxy's outer rim, their ships serving as guardians against threats that other species could not handle. They were no longer explorers or traders, but protectors of civilizations that had never learned to protect themselves. Admiral Sullivan stood on the observation deck of her flagship, watching human vessels escort Kirani colony ships to new worlds far from the swarm's predicted return route. The galaxy had awakened to humanity's existence, and humanity had awakened to its true purpose among the stars. The age of human guardianship had begun, and somewhere in the darkness between galaxies, ancient enemies were learning that Earth's children would not allow genocide to go unanswered. The Deathworld fleet was awake, and the innocent peoples of the galaxy finally had protectors who would never abandon them.